Hey guys, Welsknight here, and welcome back to another episode of Parkitect. Hope you guys are having an awesome day. I'm having a fantastic day. Last episode, we finished off Maple Meadows, so we are going to start the next level, which is the Chanute, or maybe it's Canute. We're going to start this Airfield. So we need to have 250 guests in the park, sell 400 park tickets, and hopefully do it all by the end of the second year. I think that's all pretty doable. So let's jump in, let's pause right away, and let's just see what we're working with here. We got a giant airfield that's very long but very thin. There's not really a whole lot of space to work with. Looks like we do have a little bit over here and over here. These like wooden fence areas. This is purchasable area. Like we could buy more space if we want to. But I think this is okay. So let's just kind of see. This is our entrance. We've got kind of an interesting theme, it looks like, that they've sort of established back here. Let's just see if we go hide scenery. It looks like all that's back here right now is just the depot, where all the supplies and stuff come from. So we can hide that. So let's see if this is our main entrance. Let's see what they're using. Looks like they're using this kind of sidewalk here. What's this look like? Okay, so I've got kind of an idea. Maybe what we could do, like we've got this airfield, maybe we can make this right here kind of the main path that goes up and down the, like we stick with the airfield, basically, is what I'm saying. Maybe we do something here where, like, our main walkway is kind of like this. And we try to sort of reuse what we have here and kind of make that work for us. That could be kind of cool, I think. Maybe we sort of stick with this. We'll put some shops maybe along here since we already have this nice path. And then we'll kind of stick with this sort of modern airfield hangar style theme. I think this could be really cool. We've got a little bit over 20 grand to work with. Yeah, I think we can get some work done here. So let's jump into a time lapse and get some of this stuff started. So in today's time lapse, we're basically going to do pretty much the whole park. We're going to spend almost all of our money. But I want to talk kind of before I get into some of this other kind of stuff about the time lapse itself. I want to talk a little bit about time lapses because I'm doing this one a little bit differently than I normally do time lapses. Normally when I do a time lapse, like in a Minecraft video, for example, I speed it up to 8 or 16 times the gameplay speed. And although that works great for a game like Minecraft with a time-lapse, I don't think it works as well for Parkitect. And the reason I say that is because when I do like a Minecraft time-lapse, I have a fixed camera. And that's not the case in Parkitect. In Parkitect, the camera moves around whenever I move the camera as I'm playing and building and stuff. So I think if I speed it up that much, it gets a little disorienting, I guess you would say. So I'm trying it a little bit differently today. We're only speeding this up to about 4 times the normal gameplay speed, and I'm hoping that that'll make it a little bit easier to follow. But that also means that the time lapse is going to be pretty much the bulk of the entire episode. So let me know what your thoughts are on this. I'd love to get some feedback and kind of hear what you think. But without further ado, let's start talking about what's actually going on here. So I'm starting off, as I usually do, by kind of building the shops, the food and drink for the guests. And I want to kind of make like a little aircraft hangar looking thing. We'll hide the employee path kind of behind everything, tile it all off, and make sort of like a little food court building thing, I guess you would call it. That's the technical term. We're just going to put some benches in. We're using cobblestone on the inside for the pathways, just to kind of give us a little bit of a different texture there, kind of a divider. And then we're going to put kind of an awning here. I decided I wanted to use these glass awnings, but the arch was too high, so I just kind of lowered it a little bit. And I think that'll end up working a lot better. So we can end up using these sort of glass awnings to go over the top there. I was also thinking about doing borders on the top here, kind of like you're seeing right now. Ultimately, though, there wasn't an arch that was the right shape to kind of go down the sides. So I thought maybe you'd cap it off. But ultimately, I didn't really like it. So I tried it out and I was like, nah, I don't think so. I changed my mind and I just did away with the little outlines. So we'll just kind of put the glass awnings on top over the door and pretty much call it good. Put a couple antennas on top just for a little bit of detail. And then I think it's pretty much good to go. So we've got our shops and stuff all figured out. Next thing to do is some restrooms for guests, because obviously that's also kind of an essential for any park. You got to have places for guests to get food and drink, and you got to have a place for them to use the facilities. So I'm just going to put it right next to the food court, because I think it makes sense. You know, that's kind of like the little I'm taking a break from rides area, if you will. So we're just going to kind of put it over here. And I wanted to do another building that was still kind of in the same general style, sort of a very clean, modern style, or maybe present day style would be a better way of saying it. But I didn't want to do the aircraft hangar again. So I started off with just kind of a basic box shape. And I thought, well, now we got to figure out how to make it look good. So I tried a couple different things, tried to figure out what I wanted to do for a roof. I was thinking maybe like an angled roof like this. Tried out a couple things, was looking for a way to kind of outline it and add a little bit of extra detail to it. Ultimately just decided to scrap the idea because I couldn't find pieces that sort of fit my vision. So instead, I'm using this arch top, which is really meant to be like a door, like the top of a door. And I'm going to do kind of a different, like a flat-roofed building. But I'm also not particularly happy with the way that it looked right there. So I was trying to tried a couple different things, figure out what I liked, what I didn't. I decided ultimately to just do a half wall up at the top there, kind of leave it open, then put a little glass awning over it, put a bathroom sign, and pretty much call it good. I decided also to use this kind of steel grating, this sort of tin roof looking thing, and another antenna on top just for some detail, and a windsock, because we're going with kind of a very Airfield sort of theme. That's really what I wanted to go with. But then the problem with this building is it's still just a box. It's just a rectangle, and it's fairly boring, so I decided to add just a little bit to the side, kind of sticking out, just to add a little bit of something to it, a little detail to make it a little bit less boring. But that should take care of the bathrooms, and then I'm just going to put a couple of trees in to kind of hide that employee pathway in the back, fence it off, and then it should be basically good to go. So then I had to think for a little bit about what was next, and I think, get the path down. My initial plan of basically just sticking with the airfield, like the cement parts of the airfield for all the pathways, it ended up not working out, but I hadn't made that decision yet because basically just due to space constraints, it didn't work out. So I'm just kind of going through right now and getting rid of some of the extra rock, concrete, ground. And then I think it's time for our first ride. So we're going to do the airplane ride, but I want to elevate it up a little bit. Because, airplanes fly and stuff, and I wanted to have a little bit of nice height as you kind of walk into the park. There's sort of a barrier on your I guess it would be your left if you're walking into the park. So as for the queue, I decided to do white and black. I thought it fit nicely. It was very clean and kind of fit the Airfield sort of theme a little bit, although I do ultimately end up going with different colors for the theme of the park. I stuck with the black and white path for the queues, but I decided to kind of use white and blue as our theme colors overall, and then the path on the left just kind of comes down nice and simple. And then what we'll end up doing is kind of walling the whole thing off eventually. I wanted to experiment a little bit about different ways to kind of detail out the pathways as far as like the covers over the queues and the exits go. So I was just trying a couple different things, different pillar options. Ultimately decided I didn't really like any of the ones that I had gone with as of yet, so we'll change those in a minute. But I'm just kind of filling in the walls with some of this sort of tin siding looking thing. And then for the coverings, the awnings or covers or whatever you want to call them, it took me a little while to come up with a plan, but I decided to go with these kind of very thin pillars that look a little bit more like steel beams instead of gray wood beams. They're just a lot thinner. They look a lot more metallic. I think more like wire framing almost instead of support beams. And we're just going to kind of raise those up a little bit. And then ultimately, unfortunately, as far as I know, there's not a flat piece in that size. Like there's only these thicker ones. Maybe there's one and I just haven't seen it yet. But as far as I can tell, the only sort of diagonal and then horizontal border bits here are these kind of fatter ones. But they still work. They get the job done. So we're just going to make this kind of angled cover, and then we'll just cap it off with this sort of tin roof. And I think that looks good. You know, it's not super colorful or anything like that, but that's not really the goal for this park. The goal for this park is to kind of have something that looks a bit more modern. I decided, though, that I didn't really like the placement, so I basically saved the whole thing as a blueprint just so I could scoot it over by one block. And it works. You know, that's an easy way to kind of, if you have something that you've put some time into and detailed out, but you just don't like where it is, you want to move it once you've detailed it. You know, sometimes you put something down and you start detailing it, and then it ends up taking a little bit more space than you originally envisioned or something. So using the blueprint is just an easy way to just move it over. And then I decided it was time for our first coaster in the park. So I looked at a couple different options. We're very limited in this park as far as space goes. There's just not that much space. So I'm looking for a way to kind of use that space efficiently. And I thought, hey, maybe we can put a coaster kind of hanging over the food court a little bit. And it looks a little weird right now because some of the support beams are coming down into the food court. But there's actually a way to kind of cheat the game a little bit and fix that and have it remove the pillars. We'll do that momentarily. So we'll just bring the stairs down. There's a big, huge staircase that's basically the path on and off the ride. And I'm just kind of filling that in. Sometimes it's a little weird getting fences to place on the diagonal. The game's a little bit finicky about that, but it's not impossible. So kind of filling all that stuff in, filling in some fences, you know, walling off some areas, adding some dividers. I'm going with a very simple fence here, just a simple metal fence, nothing too complicated, very clean. And I think that's something that I want to do in this park is have very kind of clean stylings and details. So now we're adding the railing going up the stairs, and there's kind of a little point right there. It's a little finicky. Sometimes you try to like delete a fence that you misplaced or something, and you end up deleting the pathway instead. And but it's fine. We got it figured out eventually. And then for the station, for the kind of top up here, I had a couple different ideas, a couple things I wanted to try. I was thinking originally maybe we do like a curved hangover awning, you know, like an awning that kind of curved over the whole thing and was open on one side. But I didn't like it. We didn't really have the right pieces to make it look the way I wanted it to. So I decided to go with almost like a greenhouse instead. So we're taking these kind of thin metal pillars and we're kind of framing everything out. And then ultimately we're going to have like a glass building here. It's going to have glass walls and windows and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be, you know, the idea is as a guest, you go up and you're up pretty high and you can kind of see out over the whole park from up there. So I wanted it to be glass so that guests would be able to kind of look out over the park, because I think that's always kind of a cool thing when you have a big high vantage point like that. I also decided I didn't want the fences because I was going to use glass walls instead, so I had to go through and remove all the fences, because you can actually stack those details on top of each other. Like, if you put down a fence and then a glass wall, they'll both occupy the same space, which is a good thing, honestly, because it allows you to do some really cool things with fence designs. But when you only want to have one of them, then you have to go through and you got to manually remove something. And then I decided just to put a couple of windsocks on top instead of flags, because I thought it was a little bit more in keeping with the theme of the park. One thing I want to do for this series is kind of stick with the theme of every park. Oh, by the way, I said it was possible to get rid of these pillars that are supporting the roller coaster. What you can do is basically take a plant and have it, a tree, and have it stick up just a tiny bit above the ground and put the very tip top of the tree underneath where the pillar is, and it'll essentially delete the pillar. So that's how we got rid of those pillars that were kind of coming down into the food court. But anyway, as I was saying, I want to kind of stick with whatever theme exists in the park, right? So here, the theme was this kind of airfield, and I want to stick with that. I don't want to go into a scenario in this game where, it's like, hey, this is an airfield and we have airplanes and stuff, and then decide I'm going to build Victorian England. I want to kind of challenge myself to kind of build in whatever theme the scenario is. So I think it'll be cool, actually, because we're going to have a whole variety of different build styles and things like that as we go throughout this whole series. But anyway, I put up a little airplane just to have something to look at when you're up on the roller coaster. And then I'm adding like a little break area in here, I guess. Just a couple benches, couple trash cans. And I decided I wanted to do like an umbrella. And this is where I decided to use blue and white as kind of the colors for the airfield. I didn't know exactly where I wanted to put them. And I also decided I wanted to use a much darker blue than what I had originally picked. But it gives us like a little break area, a little resting area, and I think that's kind of cool. Also used cobblestone there just to give us a little bit of a separation to kind of show that that's sort of off the main pathway. And then I'm just adding in more rides. We are kind of lacking in rides in this park. So I'm adding in a few more, and this one, I didn't really know where I wanted it to be, or where I wanted the queue to be. Ultimately, I decided to kind of have the queue on one side and then have you just kind of come off the ride and go down instead of like wrapping the queue around or something like that. So we're going with kind of the same elevated styling where we put kind of the tin walls to cover up the under bits of the ride and the pathways. And then as far as covering up the walkway, I tried a couple different things. I was going to use that sort of cloth awning that you saw a second ago. Decided against it because it wasn't the right size, although I do end up using it later in the park. But I decided to instead go with this kind of open, almost like an aircraft hangar, but open on one side, like a covered area, just to cover up the queue. I don't really care about the people coming off the ride. I already got their money. But I want to keep the guests who are waiting in line comfortable, because then they're happy. And then they'll hopefully spend more money. And then I added a little window tower thing on the side here, which I think looks okay. I just needed something there to kind of cover that up and add a little bit. I don't know. I think it works, but I think it could probably be tweaked to be a little bit better as well. I'm not like super happy with it, but I ultimately ended up leaving it because I had other things that I wanted to do. So I got all the railings and stuff in place where I wanted, detailed it out with some of these borders, and pretty much just decided, yeah, okay, this is good. Let's move on to the next thing. So we'll just finish this up, and then I think it's basically good. So now we'll kind of wall off the sidewalks a little bit, or border off the sidewalks. I don't know. Either way, I decided I wanted to have a Ferris wheel, but I decided I didn't like. I was originally going to kind of put it right at the end of that like pathway where you walk in. Decided I didn't like it there because it was it wouldn't be centered. So I went with a different ride instead. I went with this Gravitron, which is 4 blocks wide instead of 5. And since the pathway that you walk into the park is 2 blocks wide, you can center it. And I thought that was going to, I just thought that was better. And then we've got the queue and the line, the entrance and the exit kind of coming off there to the side of the break area. And just went with blue and white. Went with the theme colors of the park. And then for the covering, the bit that kind of covers up the line, I had a couple different things to think about. Again, I really wanted to use that the blue and white sort of cloth awning there, but it didn't really fit yet again. So kind of went without that one as well. Ultimately decided, you know what, let's just go for a fairly simple pillar-based covering like we've done a couple times. I believe I end up going with like a glass roof here that kind of like turns around, like it kind of turns the corner, sort of like we did in the very first park. I think we used something similar to this on a couple of rides over there, but just a nice glass cover to kind of, make it. The nice thing about glass roofs is that they still feel very like open and very spacious, but they still provide rain cover. So I think it works, and I think it fits really well with this theme as well, because they're also very kind of modern and sleek, which is what I wanted to go with here. Thought about a couple other little potential details, ended up getting rid of those little bits, but ultimately I think it works. So now it's time to add some foliage to the park. We still don't have enough rides, but the areas are looking fairly barren. So I wanted to get some foliage and some greenery, some trees, some bushes, some hedges, stuff like that, just to kind of brighten up the area a little bit, make it look a little bit more inviting. So I'm adding in a whole bunch of little shrubs, a bunch of trees, hedges, different things to just kind of detail it out. Also, I want to cover up some of the back parts, because there are some parts right now that like they can still see the employee area. And I also need to add in another coaster. But again, we're very limited by space, so I have to go with a very small one. We end up going with this little mini loop coaster that's pretty small. Very small, in fact. But we just put it on the ground. There's not really a whole lot of detailing to do here. It's a fairly small area. And it's not it's a very, very small coaster. There's just not much. But I did make it blue to fit the theme of the park. And then as far as the cover on this one, I think I may have actually just left this one open. I might not have even covered up the line and the entrance and the exit on this one. I don't know that I even had like a proper station. One thing I did notice was that I did not have an employee staff room. I didn't have anywhere for my employees to take a break. So I made a path that goes underground because your guests don't want to see the employee paths. And I put a staff room back here and kind of like a fake aircraft hangar that's not actually open to the public. Like there's no way for people to get inside other than that underground employee path. So it's basically just a facade to cover up the staff room. And I didn't have room for normally I would put the staff room back by the depot where they get all the supplies for the shops and stuff, but there just wasn't room back there. So I ended up putting it over here instead and then making it accessible via an underground pathway. I just put like a little facade door on the front, and I think it works. People, they'll be able to see the building, but they won't be able to see the staff room inside of it, which I think is good. And then last, I wanted a little Ferris wheel. So we're just going to put that in. We need a couple more rides, but I am kind of running out of money. And a Ferris wheel is a fairly, it's not really a super popular ride, but it's kind of an essential. And it's fairly cheap. So I decided to just kind of put one of those in as well, make a real simple little queue, and then to cover that up, I thought this is a good spot to use this kind of blue cloth-covered awning-looking thing. So I think that worked out. Also adds a little splash of color to the park, which I think is really needed, because there's a lot of gray and green, and not a lot of other stuff. So now it's just a matter of kind of putting in the fences, to sort of, put the finishing touches on everything, make sure all the pathways are sort of blocked off, if you will. Add in some benches, add in some trash cans, maybe a couple of lights. You know, just sort of the final details, the little finishing touches before we ultimately open the park. Now, I don't know if we're going to be able to complete the scenario just by opening the park like we did with the first one. The first one, we basically opened the park, and within like 2 minutes, we had met the goals of the scenario. I don't know if that's going to be the case here because we have a lot of unused space, and we really don't have that many rides. I think we only have like 5 or 6 rides in this park, and the first one had like 8. But we'll see. We're almost at the end of the time lapse, so we'll be opening the park up very, very shortly to find out how it does. But I've got a couple more tiny little details I want to add. Some more foliage. You can see me checking the decoration weighting and finding out that over on that left side, we need to cover up the employee pathway a lot better. So I'm just adding in some more trees and foliage to hopefully kind of block that off from sight. You can still kind of, we still need a little bit more. But ultimately, I'm going to add in a couple of props, a couple planes, and then a few more trees. And then I'm pretty much going to call it good. And that is basically the end of this time lapse. This is about 2 hours of gameplay condensed down to, well, 4 times less than that. All right, it is time to open up the park. We have a couple of guests who managed to kind of trickle in because when you load up the scenario, it automatically starts unpaused. And during that time lapse, I took a break, like a 5-minute break, like once or twice, just so I wasn't sitting in a chair for 2 hours straight. And there was a couple little moments where a couple guests snuck in. But for the most part, we haven't really opened up the park yet. We do have a couple things we need to do before we open the park, and that it basically involves hiring employees. So we need a hauler. We need a mechanic. 1 security guard. And I guess we'll just stick with the raptor because there's not really anything that fits the theme super well. So just make sure we get our employees in place. And then I think we're basically good to go. Oh, and the other thing, that's right. I've got some rides that are not yet open. So let's kind of figure out what we want to charge for these. Usually you can go about 1.5 times the excitement level. What would that be? Divided by 10. So like for this one, I think $3 is pretty reasonable. So we'll do that and then open it. Over here, 28, we can probably get, I don't know, 4 for this, I think is fairly okay. This one is already open. This guy, 35. Let's ask maybe, let's ask maybe $4.50. I think that's reasonable. And then we've got the Ferris wheel. I think we can probably get, let's ask like $2.75. Oh. Let's guess like, yeah, $2.75 for the Ferris wheel, I think is fair. So that's open. Did we open this one? No, we haven't opened that one either. So 47. So let's ask like $6.50 for this one. And then I think that's all the rides open now. All right, let's go ahead and speed this up a little bit. Let some people kind of flow into the park. We'll start looking at their thoughts. Park entrance fee is a great deal. Let's maybe jack that up to like $3 and see what people say. We'll just kind of see if this number of people saying the park entrance fee is a good deal keeps going up at $3. Because we are a bit low on money. Wow, now it's up to 20. Wow, yeah, people are really fine with paying more. Let's ask like maybe $5. 23, 22, 19. All right, people are still saying it's a good deal, but I think I'm good with leaving it at 5. Let's just leave it right there. One of our optional goals is to sell 400 park tickets if we can. We may very well just get to 250 guests before we sell 400 park tickets. So we'll see. because it wants us to have 250 guests in the park at once. But I guess we'll find out what other people saying. Still happy with the price. No one's complaining about food or anything like that. Decoration looks pretty solid. No trash, no vandalism. Not really surprising since the park just opened, but I guess we'll see. And we got our staff doing staff things. So I think everything is fairly good. People aren't complaining about the price of the entry ticket, so that's good. Let's look at our finances a little bit and just kind of see how we doing money-wise. We are pretty far in the green for February, which is good. That's what we want to see. We spent a ton of money the first month on building, supplies, different stuff like that, but now it should be a little bit more manageable. And the big thing is just making sure that our rides are going to be profitable for us, and they should be, I think. Yeah, everything seems to be running. We still got these shops and stuff that aren't stocked yet, but our hauler's working on it. Slowly. He's getting there. Okay, entry fee is a good deal. Looks like there's a lot less people now that are thinking that, but that's good. I haven't seen anyone complaining about the price to enter the park, so that's what we want to see. We want to make sure that the people in the park are not complaining about the price. We're fine with them not saying it's a great deal, because that basically is code for I'm willing to pay more. But we want to make sure that they're not complaining about it being too expensive, because that means it's guests that are not entering the park. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm just going to let this run for a little while, and we'll see where we go as far as guests go. We'll see if we kind of cap out and if we have to do more with the park, or if we'll just kind of get up to that 250. So I'm just going to let this run for a little bit. I'll be back in a sec. All right, so it looks like we're actually capping out at about 210, which is pretty close to our goal. But I want to complete all of the non-optional goals as well, so we can get the little gold star for completing everything. One thing I've noticed people complaining about is they're saying, do we not have staff rooms? We totally have staff rooms. I don't know why. I mean, and with that said, the staff room is actually being used as well. It says staff served 1. So I don't know what the deal is there. Maybe something? Either way, it's fine. But I think we are out of time for this episode. So I'm going to end this one right here, and we'll be able to finish this off in the next episode. We are making money, which is good. I don't think we need a whole lot to kind of put us over the hill, if you will. We got a couple minor things to do. We'll probably finish this park in the next episode, and then probably start the next park afterwards. So guys, that is going to do it for today. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Links in the description below, so check that out as well. Otherwise, my friends, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.